Hi, everybody. What a great crowd. This is fantastic. Welcome. Welcome to Beaverton City Library. It's One Book, One Beaverton. It's our annual storytelling showcase. I'm Blaine Ross. I'm a reference assistant here at the library. That is my partner and co-producer over there, Ann LaValle. And she, along with Jenny Chamberlain, I know you're out there, Jenny. Stand up, Jenny. No, come on, stand up. Say hi to Jenny and Ann. Jenny and Ann are the ones who run the One Book, One Beaverton program, so I guilted Jenny into coming today, so I had to make her stand up. They do a great job, and thank you. Hey, Ann, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Blaine?
Well, do you really want to know? So 4 hours ago, the elevator was not working. And thanks to our great facilities department and Ken, the amazing elevator repairman, he got it up and running. So I hope somebody used the elevator. So anyway, welcome. I'm so glad this is a great turnout. I really appreciate you coming, choosing us to watch stories with today. I mean, you could be at a Super Bowl pregame party, and I'm just curious, has everyone been to a storytelling here before? Do we have new people? Oh, yeah, we got lots of new people. Fantastic. Welcome. Do you know about the One Book Beaverton program? Does everyone know what that is? Oh, okay. So every year, Jenny and Ann go through great lengths to pick a book that the entire city is encouraged to read, and then we build programming around it. And then the author comes and does an author talk. And that is happening a week from today at the Reeser. And it seats 550. It is sold out, but it's a free show. Does anyone here have tickets? Okay, some people got tickets. I will tell you, there's a very good chance. I'm gonna talk to Ann about percentage chance here in just a second. There's a really good chance if you want to go and you show up on Saturday at 6:45, you should be able to get in. The research seats. What's that? I think if we fill that place up with 550 people, that's going to be a really good problem to have. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think you should all come so we can at least give it a chance. So the author talks are really good. Even if you have not read the book, I really recommend the author talks. They talk on a wide range of things, and it's a great show, and it's free. And the Reeser is amazing. If you haven't been to the Reeser, it's worth going just for the structure itself. So please come. Ann, let's announce next year's book. Can we do that, Jenny?
Blaine.
No. Oh, yeah, not yet because we don't have the book yet. So that's it's always an agonizing process. I see a lot of sweat coming off their brows while they're doing it.
There's a lot of reading, a lot of furious reading that has to happen.
Yes. Yeah. And do you get paid to do that reading?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm going to say you don't get paid enough. Okay, so I got a couple things to go over real quick. Thank you for silencing your cell phones. I'm sure you've probably done that. The bathrooms are out in the foyer if you need to use them during the show. We are filming the event. It will be available on YouTube in the near future. And then I also really want to thank a few people, especially besides Ann and Jenny, the Friends of the Beaverton City Library. They give us the money to do all this programming every year, and we really appreciate that. And also I want to give a shout out to the Beaverton Community Theater and Back Fence Storytelling, and also the Book Corner. They've all contributed. You all got a raffle ticket, right? Does everybody have a raffle ticket? Who wants one? Okay. So after the show, we're going to draw the numbers, and there are five options. You'll be able to, if it's your number, you get to choose. There's two $20 gift certificates to the Book Corner, and then there are 2 sets of 4 tickets to the Beaverton Community Theater show of your choice, and you can come right here and see the production. And also then the Back Fence, who I work with, they kind of partners in Portland. They do a lot of storytelling. Frame Masters has contributed a couple tickets to a future show. So if you win, got my card in there, you can get a hold of me and we'll get you set up. Also out there, we have programming flyers for upcoming programming, and also there is an email sign-up sheet. If you want to be emailed about future live storytelling events here, you can sign up, or you can also take my business card and send me an email, and I will put you on the list either way. And please write legibly if you do it, because I still get about 20 or 30 bounce backs from a list of 300 people, and I'm sure they're going, why has he not emailed me? They didn't write legibly. Or at least I couldn't read what they wrote. Also, a special little teaser in April, on April 18th, right here, we're launching a new program, event / I don't know what it's going to be. It's called The Library Show. And we are going to have, it's going to be like a late night talk show, and we're going to have 3 guests. Alex Dang, who's a slam poet, he's amazing. He will be here. Brianna Wheeler, who is an author and Willamette Week columnist who just wrote a memoir, she'll be here. And then also Travis Abels, he's a storyteller, performance artist who was here last year and told the story. He's really great. He's going to come back, and I don't know what he's going to do. It could be really entertaining. And then they'll all sit down for an interview with me afterwards, and there'll be lots of fun, entertainment, prizes. Definitely, it's going to be fun. So teaser for that, that'll be April 18th. It's a Friday night and after-hours show, so look for that in the future. Okay, and, we should talk about what the rules are. We got rules for this.
Yeah, let's talk about the rules.
Yeah, talk about the rules. You talk for a while. I'm tired of talking.
Let's see. One of the rules is that the story has to be a story that happened to you, right? A personal story.
Yeah, or at least adjacent to you. True story, especially if it's a family member. And yeah. We're not going to fact check the tellers. We trust them. And
the story has to be no more than like 15 minutes?
Yeah, we're pretty loosey-goosey. We tell the tellers 8 to 12 minutes. We do have a rattle that we almost never shake, but let's use the baby rattle first.
Okay, here's the baby rattle.
If you get to 12 minutes and it looks like you're not going to end anytime soon, you're probably going to hear that. I don't think we'll need the nuclear option, but let them hear it anyway so they can be scared. Yeah. That's an ancient family relic of mine. I'm not even sure where it's from. It's sat on our bookcase for years. So I think that's all the rules, basically.
I think that's right.
Yeah. I have one last piece of bad news. Trevino Brings Plenty, who was going to be here tonight, is ill. And I just found out today, so he won't be here. I'm really sorry about that. He was very apologetic, and I'm sure you all know everybody knows somebody who's sick right now, so really sorry about that. But we got 4 great tellers, so it's going to be a great show. On that note, our first teller tonight is Liani Reeves. She was born in Seoul, South Korea, and adopted from an orphanage when she was just a few months old into an American family. She spent her early childhood in upstate New York and moved to a rural coastal town in southern Oregon at the age of 12. She is an accomplished attorney and litigator who has won a number of prestigious awards, most recently the 2024 Lifetime Achievement Award from the Oregon Commission for Women. This award recognizes leaders who have inspired and supported the advancement of other Oregon women in their community and profession through their volunteer, personal, professional, and activism work. She has also taken to the stage at the Reeser as part of the Immigrant Story. And today we are happy to have you here on our stage sharing her story. Come on up, Leanne. Howdy.
Good afternoon. So I'm recovering from pneumonia, so I apologize. I'm going to struggle through this a little bit. But my name's Liani Reeves, and my story is called An Orphan's Long Journey Home. My mom was diagnosed with cancer right before COVID hit. We spent most of 2020 watching from a distance as she fought cancer alone. Because of the pandemic, we couldn't visit her in the facility where she was living. One time, my brother and I were sitting on lawn chairs that had been soaked by the sprinkler system, trying to talk to her through a screen window. An orderly snuck us in for a secret visit, and that was one of my few happy memories of 2020. In August, we finally got to visit my mom for real, but it was only because she decided to forego additional treatment and entered hospice care that they finally let us in her room. On August 22nd, 2020, my mom joined my dad, who had died almost 20 years ago. They say when you lose both parents, you join the orphan club. Losing your parents after they've had a chance to raise you is a natural progression in life. Being abandoned on an orphanage doorstep is not, and that is how I first joined the orphan club. Sometime in May 1976, I was dropped off on an orphanage doorstep in Seoul, South Korea. The orphanage named me Shin Kyung-ok and sent me to live with the foster mom while I awaited placement with a new family. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, my soon-to-be mother was carrying around a small black and white photograph of the perfect little Asian baby girl she was waiting to welcome home from Korea. I arrived in the United States on September 30th, 1976. After crossing an ocean and a country on a plane full of screaming orphans being dropped off at cities all across the country to meet their new families, I finally met my new family at JFK Airport. By the time my mom picked up that perfect little Asian baby girl, I was angry. I was screaming. I was inconsolable. That anger I felt coming off the plane fueled temper tantrums my entire childhood. I used to slam my bedroom door so hard it would bounce back and it put a hole in the wall. My parents would fix it, and guess what? I'd do it again. They eventually just stopped fixing it. I had an older brother. I was terrible to my older brother. One time, I took his precious Legos and I threw them in the toilet. And while he watched in horror and disbelief, this perfect little Asian baby girl flushed them down. I pushed the boundaries of my new family's love in every way. I think I was testing them to see if they would abandon me the way my first family had. Because although I didn't quite understand what adoption meant, I understood that I was abandoned on a doorstep by my first family, and I was terrified that my new family would do the same. I would get so scared when they would leave for a night out. I really didn't know if they were coming back. And even well into adulthood, sometimes I would go to the bathroom and I would get this panicked, irrational feeling, because I was afraid that when I came back, that they'd just be gone. Despite that anger and that fear, I had what was probably a fairly typical white middle-class childhood in upstate New York. And I say white because I didn't think of myself as Korean or Asian, and my family didn't really think of me that way either. They just assumed that if they treated me the way they treated my brother, their biological son, that the rest of the world would do the same. It turns out that would not always be the case, but for me, growing up in my white American family, in my white American neighborhoods, I had no idea that the way I saw myself and the way my family saw me was not the way the rest of the world was always going to see me. Then when I was 12, my dad retired, and we relocated from upstate New York to rural southern Oregon, to a town outside of Coos Bay, barely a population over 1,000. That town was suffering from the decline of fishing and logging. It was a town that is and was so far from the progressive community I had known in New York. It was a town that outright rejected outsiders immigrants, people of color, and I represented all three, so the town rejected me. That ignorant bliss of having no racial identity was quickly replaced with feelings of confusion, self-loathing, and an extreme identity crisis. And that anger that fueled those temper tantrums as a child had to be redirected to self-defense. Going into high school, I was bullied on a daily basis. I literally had a line of girls waiting to fight me. I was confused because I was being called things like chink and gook, as if those terms had any meaning to me. But I felt no connection to Korea or to Asia. The only thing I knew was that that was a source of pain and shame, and I wanted to rid myself of it. I spent most of my high school bleaching my hair as blonde as I could get it, wearing colored contacts, trying to fit in. In retrospect, looking back, I'm sure I looked ridiculous. But the administration at the school couldn't do anything about it, or wouldn't, and my parents, as well-intentioned white folks, did not understand what racism looked like, and they could not comprehend that their baby girl would be the victim of it. When I started to transition from girl to woman, I was hit with another identity I hadn't experienced before. I started to understand the fetishism that comes with being an Asian woman. One day, I was a freshman on the school bus. A senior boy sat down next to me. He pulled out a knife. He called me a gook. He told me, "Go home to China." And then he proceeded to try to kiss and grope me. I was so confused at this mix of, I guess, loving and loathing being directed at me just because I was an Asian woman. The bullying eventually stopped, but it was only because my parents decided to go out and hire a lawyer. And it was at that moment I realized one person had the ability to change my life in such a profound way, and I wanted that for myself and for others. So now I had a plan. Get out, become a lawyer, and never go back to that town. But as an Asian American woman, I was told early on, you don't fit the image of a lawyer. I've heard, well, you don't look like a lawyer, from everyone from my career services advisor to my Uber driver. So naturally, I set out to prove them wrong. I did what was expected of me. I worked hard to excel academically. I graduated from law school at the top of my class with a top job. From the outside looking in, I bet my life looked flawless and my path seamless. But although I was so bound and determined to prove I could be the lawyer that people didn't think I could be, I never really stopped to think, who am I as a person? I kept this charade up for a long time, just pretending to be the lawyer that people didn't think I could be. And my career was thriving, but I was falling apart inside. I had no idea who I was. I came to a state of being completely lost. I fell into a state of extreme depression. My only sense of control became an obsessive compulsive eating disorder. Each morning, I would step on the scale and I would weigh myself, and I would actually change my clothes until I saw a number I could live with. That number kept getting smaller and smaller until I ended up in St. Vincent's Hospital with no recognition of who I was. Coming out of the hospital, I had to rebuild everything: my body, my career, my life, and really for the first time, build an identity. I've struggled with my various identities throughout my life and felt at odds with each of them. But eventually, I learned to live and almost thrive in that place of contradiction. I've come to terms with being a Korean who has no connection to Korea, an Asian who didn't grow up culturally Asian, an immigrant who came involuntarily, an Asian American who's never felt Asian or American, a person of color who grew up, let's face it, totally white, and an Asian American woman who was told I would not fit in to a profession dominated by white men. My path from orphanage doorstep to here has not been seamless. I have stumbled along the way. But in 2020, before my mom passed, she had the opportunity to see her little baby Asian girl become president of the Oregon State Bar. Thank you. The first Asian American and the first woman of color to be president. So I can now, with confidence, stand here and say, this is what a lawyer looks like. And I found this is who I am. With my mom's passing, I came full circle, right? I really had to learn how to walk in the world without parents. I sort of joined the orphan club again. One of the last things my mom said to me was, I wish I had told you more about the house. And I was super confused about the comment because as she was dying, the last thing that was on my mind was where the circuit breaker box was on the house back in that town that had rejected me. But that's just kind of who my mom was, sort of practical till the very end. But with her passing, I started to look at that town differently. It is the place that my mom and dad chose to spend their final years together. One day, walking on the beach, watching the most extraordinary sunset over an abandoned paper mill, I found forgiveness. I realized that town had also been abandoned when the natural resources that had once sustained it ran dry. That town also lashed out in anger. That town was me and was a part of me. And although it may seem strange to end the story here in a place that caused me so much pain, I realized it's just one more place where I learned to thrive in contradiction. That town rejected me for being Asian American, but it is the first place that I actually realized I was both Asian and American. That town set out to make me fail, but it drove me to succeed. That town lashed out in anger against me, but it is the place where I finally learned to let my anger go. I made peace with that place, and I claim it as part of my identity, and I've claimed it as the place that this orphan can call home. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. That's amazing. You must be a formidable person to face in court. Hopefully you didn't have to go to court for the Lego incident, the family court. Yeah, if you look on, I forget the name of the law firm you work for, but Liani has a very long list of awards she's won. I only mentioned one of them. Thank you so much, and thank you for powering through the pneumonia and telling. Really appreciate it. Okay, next teller. Our next teller is Mike. He goes by Mikey Shethar. He's a chef, culinary consultant, podcaster, and world traveler who believes that community is built around food. A graduate of the Culinary Institute of America in Napa, California, Mike's life has been a veritable smorgasbord of food-related jobs, from chef on a large organic farm to chef instructor for a K-12 school system. And then he was also a food consultant to many well-known food companies. He still does that. He currently works with various local nonprofit groups helping to expand the access to food and cooking and educate around how, when, and why to cook local food. He also hosts a few podcasts, including Mikey and Rennie Eat In, where he and his wife talk about food and recipes with amazing guests and apparently some foul language. Mike lives right here in Portland with his wife, Corrine, and their dog, Abby. You can learn more about him at his website, mikeshethar.com. I suspect he's about to serve us a tasty morsel right now. Welcome to the stage, Mike.
I'm too much of a hand talker to walk around with the microphone. It'll get chucked to the ceiling. Hello, everybody. How are you all? That's great. So, I'm a chef, and I think a lot of chefs have these kind of foundational stories about cooking with their grandmothers, right? I know there's like these kind of like quiet, soft stories about learning these generational recipes that are passed down from their grandmothers. I don't have that. One, because my grandmothers, neither of them were kind of soft or quiet. They were intense. These were hard people. But also, I don't think that I actually have an active memory of either of them eating. Ever. Grandjan was my dad's mother, and she was a bird. Like, physically looked like a bird, might have had hollow bones. She was just this tiny little wisp of a woman. She was wonderful, but she was like hard, brass tacks, very funny, all these different things. Food? No. I think that she probably subsisted on the crumbs that would drop from the 4 sandwiches that the 4 people in my immediate family would buy, and then she would criticize us for the entire time that we were there, because she'd be like, this is an unbelievable amount of food for you to bring into my home. These sandwiches are disgusting. They're so big. And they were just normal sandwiches. So I think she would just eat the little crumbs off the floor. Marnie, this is my mom's mom, potentially the most Catholic person that's ever existed on the planet, besides the Pope. Marnie, her outfit all the time was basically head to toe sweatsuit or like jumpsuit, gigantic Jesus piece, like gold or silver. She dressed like a 90s rapper. She was like Slick Rick with a perm. And her only things that I ever saw her consume, I believe, were like a polite gin and tonic and the body of Christ. She went to church probably 87 times a week. So I never cooked with my grandmothers, but they had different ways of showing me love, and they were kind of not the traditional grandmotherly ways, but I felt it. I grew up like 3,000 miles away from both of them. I was in Colorado, they were in New York and New Hampshire, so I would normally see them in the summer. And I don't have cooking memories with them, but I do have tons of food memories. And most of them are centered around the ultimate summer food, which is the sandwich. Sandwich, it's mobile, it's on the go. It's great for eating while you're being chased by your cousins. It's great for eating while you're running away from your exceptionally huggy aunt. It's great eating with a lake wet hand. It's great for eating with your grandmother. Grandjan. Chicken salad. Grapes. Pecans. On a fluffy white roll. Andre Agassi is sweating on the television. Wimbledon, I don't know, some tennis thing. Andre Agassi was the top tier love of my grandmother's life. All she cared about was his beautiful mullet, his tiny little shorts. She loved Andre Agassi. He's sweating on the TV. I'm sweating on the couch in my grandmother's house because it is 95 degrees outside with 95% humidity, and she has a broken air conditioner that's rattling in the corner and doing nothing. I'm eating my sandwich. She's trying to read in her chair, and I think all of you know like what her chair looked like. It was unbelievably soft, unbelievably broken, like just cracked leather everywhere. But she spent all of her time there. So book in one hand, in her other palm she had iodized salt that she would wet her finger and then eat the iodized salt. So crumbs and salt, she was basically like a barnyard animal, I guess. And so interrupting her reading, I am telling her about all the things that are going on with me. I'm showing her pictures of my friends from home. She's judging their clothing. She's saying things about their weight. She's saying some kind of light racist things. It's just all very grandmotherly. She's just doing the grandma thing. I tell her that I'm in love for the first time. And she finishes her salt. And I finish my sandwich. And she gives me a bony hug, a bony bird hug. And she holds it for longer than I know she's comfortable with, for sure. And I know she loves me. And I feel it. Fluffernutter on Wonder Bread. We're at the lake, and my grandmother turns to me and asks me if I'm attracted to my cousin. Yikes. I know the correct answer for this, but it's difficult. This is a cousin that I see once every 2 years. I'm 14 years old. She's in a bathing suit. I take a gigantic bite of my Fluffernutter sandwich. It's sickeningly sweet, and I try to think about baseball. But I don't know anything about baseball. Ham sandwich. Tons of French's mustard, the yellow mustard, so vinegary. Pepperidge Farm white bread. Grand Jan is 97 years old, and she is telling us about the LGBTQ group that she has started in her home for kids in her neighborhood that have been rejected by their parents after coming out. She's awesome. She's also talking about the fact that she wants to die. And this may seem like, oh my gosh, but she's been talking about this for 20 years. And she's totally healthy. She's great. She's just super stubborn. And she's like, I don't want to be here anymore. My husband's dead. All my friends are dead. I want to be gone. I eat my super vinegary sandwich. I wince at the mustard. This is the last time that I'll see Grand Jan alive. Grand Jan died on the first night that all of her kids were in her home under the same roof in 20 years. And she fell asleep, and she didn't wake up. And it was a beautiful way to go, a hero's death. Marnie. Club sandwich, triple decker, obviously, stuffed with potato chips. I'm in my tennis whites. There are places in the world that you have to wear all white clothing to play tennis. Gross. My tennis whites are covered in like green clay and blood because I've got skinned elbows and skinned knees. I was just going real hard for the forehand. Hardcore. Marnie is in her chair. Everybody has their chair. She's in her chair. And she is trying her damnedest to do the New York Times crossword puzzle, which she does every day, mostly in silence, but then I'm there. And I'm rattling on I'm telling her about my dog from home. I'm telling her about skateboard tricks. And she's not listening at all. But she is just, every once in a while, she's kind of punctuating, like she knows she needs to say something, and she says, yeah. She has this crazy Brooklyn, New York City accent. It's insane. She sounds like a cartoon character. And she finishes her crossword puzzle. I think she doesn't finish it, but she's finished with me, so she gets up to leave, and she's like, I'm done. I'm done hearing your stupid stories. And her fleshy hands kind of envelop my hand, and she presses 2 perfumed $20 bills into my hand. And she whispers to me, Mikey, you're a sweet boy. And she means it, and I can feel it, and I know she loves me. I might be her favorite. I have like 32 cousins on that side, so the odds are kind of stacked against me, but come on, everybody. I'm her favorite. Peanut butter and jelly on weird, expensive bread. And it's creamy peanut butter she always had at her house. I don't know if you guys are creamy peanut butter people, but yuck. Crunchy only. Crunchy only. Marnie's Alzheimer's is progressing. And it is awesome. It's so great. This is like the most contained, conservative woman you've ever met in your life. I've never gotten the real her. And her Alzheimer's she's an open book. She's so fun. And we're in this kind of window for a while where she's absolutely fun. All she wants to do is 3 things. 1, drink a gin and tonic. 2, laugh so loudly that she basically almost gets kicked out of every restaurant that we're in. Multiple times people came over and they're like, ma'am, you're like disturbing the rest of the restaurant. You're laughing too loud. Which should be a crime to tell people that they're laughing too loud. That's amazing. And the 3rd thing, she kind of wants to have some naughty conversations. Uh-oh. And I'm just like, we have found each other. Like, these are my 3 favorite things to do in the world. Yeah, but the window it's fleeting. We all know that it is. But I soak up every moment of it. It's great. Crab roll. Buttered hot dog bun. It is, are you hungry? I have all these sandwiches in my back pocket, so I'll give them to you. Don't worry about it. I don't want to stress you out. It's a warm, breezy summer night. We're in Maine, out on a porch. It's a quiet night, but all of my relatives are there, so the air is just punctuated with loud New Yorkers telling their side of the story. Marnie's there. My soon-to-be wife is there, and it's the first time that she's ever meeting Marnie. And as I told you before, Marnie talks like a New York Muppet. She's got this crazy voice, but she's not really talking that much at this point. She's kind of like, it's unclear what's ever going to come out of her mouth, and so I think she knows to kind of like keep it tight. But she's had a couple G&Ts, and so we're sitting together on this little sofa, and I'm wearing like a silver cuff bracelet, which I think is so cool. And it's a lot like the jewelry that she would wear. She should love this. So she's looking at this bracelet, and she's looking at me, and she's looking at this bracelet, and she's looking at my fiance, and she looks up at me and she says, "What are you, a pansy?" I'm not 100% sure what she's referring to, but we all kind of know what she's talking about. And in her estimation, 100% I'm a pansy, like definitely. And that's the last thing that I ever hear her say to me. But it's kind of fitting. Marnie, she slowly slipped away. She was kind of surrounded by like a rotating cast of family and nurses. My uncle's new wife took a selfie with her body at the wake. Very cool. So, those were my grandmothers. And those were the sandwiches that I remember them by. And while I don't have like an ingredient-soaked stack of note cards with all of their like family recipes, I can find my grandmother's anywhere that a deli is open between 2 slices of bread. Thank you.
Mikey, great job. Thank you so much. I think everybody's thinking about their sandwiches when they were a kid now, right? I immediately went back to my mom would make me, it was peanut butter and jelly. She made her own jelly preserves, jam actually. But the bread it came on, it was like this egg bread, and it was really dry. It came from the Oro wheat that used to be right over here, but it was always this egg bread, and everybody would look at me and go, "What is that yellow bread?" Everyone else has got the white bread. It's like, that's what it comes on. They never wanted to trade with me. Oh, Ann, what you got for sandwiches?
Actually, I was just thinking about how I always wanted crunchy peanut butter.
Oh.
But my mom would not buy it for some reason. I don't know if it was more expensive.
Yeah.
But I always was like so jealous of the kids who had the crunchy peanut butter.
So you had creamy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Only creamy.
Yeah. My kids, they also only want creamy. They don't want crunchy. And they also, when they were little, they wanted Skippy or Jif, right? They want that palm oil in there. And I was like, no, we need to get them healthy peanut butter. And so at one point I went to Trader Joe's, I got whatever the organic, just peanut butter is, and I put it into a Jif container. Because at that point, oh no, they made one sandwich with it, and they knew it. They was like, Dad, fine, whatever. It was worth a try. It was worth a try. What's that? That's, God, why did I think of that? Oh, man, half and half. Whoever's going to try that on their kids, try half and half. That's worth a try. I know, no, they still want Jeff. Yeah, no. Yeah. All right, well, our next teller is Sara Houranpay. Sorry, she has a Turkey last name. She is a child of the Islamic Revolution. She and her twin sister were born in 1978, just 3 days after the regime led by Ruhollah Khomeini imposed martial law on Iran. She and her family lived a tenuous existence, eventually leaving Iran during the Iran-Iraq War in 1985, when it became too dangerous politically for her father and family to remain there. In 1991, she and her sister returned to Iran while her parents were opening the Persian House restaurant here in Portland. The Iranian government prevented them from leaving for the next 5 years, which were difficult, but Sara found the silver lining was that she had the opportunity to learn the language and the culture of Persia to pass on to her own children. She went to college and dental school and currently practices as a dental hygienist. While the restaurant closed in 2021, she still maintains relationships with the customers who came there and fell in love with the Persian culture. Sara's been a storyteller on the stage at the Reeser as part of the Immigrant Story Project, and we're honored to have her here today to tell her story. Come on up.
Thank you everyone for coming. I want to thank, I'm just always so touched. I have patients here. I have customers from my parents' restaurant that are literally like family and close friends from my kids' school. So as storytellers, we appreciate the support. And I'm going to piggyback on Mikey's grandmothers. We were talking before the show. So my story is called Heroes Eat Pomegranates. I was inspired. I changed my story that I was going to tell today about a month ago. Not a month ago, about 2 weeks ago, a little less. I was inspired by something tragic that happened to us that hit very close to home. We have a 13-year-old neighbor that lost his father in 2022 and lost his mother less than 2 weeks ago and became orphaned. And I was thinking about what's going on in our country and in our world, and I want to tell you today a story about love and wisdom. And that story is about my grandmother, a woman that was an amazing role model for love, of which I think we need more of those kind of human beings in our world these days. Universally, as humans, we all search for love. We all want to be accepted, and we all want to be loved for who we are. And that search that we do as human beings, when we find it, when we find love, and when we find that deep feeling of being accepted, it makes us feel joy. And we become very accepting of everything. And that is what my grandmother made me feel. She made me feel whole. My grandmother puts out her hand to shake mine, kind of like a business deal. That was my grandmother. She was too weak to even sit up, but she wanted me to be at peace, that our care for each other had came full circle. She had bathed me, fed me, and cared for me as an infant, and I had done the same for her in her final stages of cancer. My sister and I were born in 1978 during the Iranian Revolution. We were born into conflict. My mother was often overwhelmed with twins. My grandmother would rush right in and pick us up, and she would give her a break for weeks. And after weeks, we would come home. And food always represented love and community in my family. We came from a huge, close-knit family. And when it was time to eat, you did not know where the table started and where it ended. We ate on this long, beautiful piece of tapestry filled with my grandmother's delicious Persian food. On one side of the table was my elders, and the other side were all the children. My grandmother brought people together with food. In 1980, Saddam Hussein invaded Iran. The 8 years of war brought economic devastation, brought fear, and brought exhaustion to that country. When the sirens would go off, my grandmother would have her pot of homemade food in one hand, and she would hurry us grandkids down into the underground bunker. And when we were down there, she would feed every single one of us with her hands. One day, as I was down there, being the smart-ass kid I said to her, "Why do you always feed us when we're down here?" And she stopped and she paused and she said, "Do you want to die hungry?" She said, "Food feeds the soul." My childlike brain was like, "No, I don't want to die hungry." But my adult-like brain now knows it was a great distraction. My father worked for the Shah's regime. And when Khomeini came to Iran, he knew that if the current regime found out, that we would be in grave danger. And in 1985, my father got word that he was betrayed by one of his ex-co-workers. Not by choice, but we had to flee immediately. And I remember when we were leaving in that airport, as my grandmother said goodbye to me, I looked down at her hands and her hands were shaking. That scared me even more. She was the strongest person I knew. And when I saw her hands shaking, I knew I was in trouble. We went over to the other side of the airport, and it was so hot. We had these incredibly heavy coats. My father, being in the Secret Service, had sewed all of our valuables into me and my sister's jackets. And we kept fidgeting, and we kept fidgeting, and at some point my mother got down on her knees, face to face with us. And she said, "If you keep moving, we will not make it out of here alive." But we were one of the lucky ones. We did. We made it out alive. We made it into the States in 1985 on a tourist visa with twice as much luggage than any tourist should come to this country with. I'm shocked they let us in. We came in. My parents quickly got started. They opened the first ethnic Persian restaurant in Portland. They wanted to name it a fantastic Persian Iranian name, but it wasn't the norm those days, so we kept it simple. My father named it Market Plaza, named after the streets it was on. And to lure in the customers who had never had Persian food, he had items like chicken kebab and fettuccine. And people would go look at the menu and be like, "Oh, fettuccine." And then they'd come in, and my mother would try her hardest and say, "You should try the chicken kebab. It's pretty easy. It's like a chicken on a stick." And people would try it, and slowly Portland became familiar with Persian food. When we were 13, we missed family terribly and asked my parents if we could go to Iran. My father assumed it'd been 6 years and that we were safe, so he sent us to Iran. When we got into the airport, we immediately knew that things were not going to be okay. Soon as they saw our names, which when we were 13, we went to Iran, they still didn't have computers, so they'd go through, and they got to our name, and they said, "Please go stand over there." So we stood there, and stood there, and stood there, and at some point, they came and confiscated our passports. We found out that my father had been blacklisted, and they decided that they were going to keep us to lure my father back to Iran. They interrogated me and my sister. I was 13, and when they asked questions about my father, my second smart-ass response was, "I'm 13. I don't even like my dad." And I think the interrogator was like, "I don't know where to go from here." But at some point, they realized we didn't know anything and let us live with my grandparents. My grandparents were devout, religious Muslims. Their own kids weren't even allowed to go to the movie theaters. And now they had 2 American teenagers. going back to my grandmother, boy, did she teach you patience, and how quickly she accepted us in and accepted the fact that all of her kids are left, and now she had kids she had to raise again. So one night, as my grandparents' rule were, can't talk to boys, can't go to parties, and we were teenagers, all we wanted to do is talk to boys and go to parties, I decided at 1 a.m. I had a brilliant plan. I was gonna sneak out of the house, and I was gonna go to a party. So I called the taxi driver, and on the old school phone, now they call old school, I just went, "Don't ring the doorbell." It was winter. I was carrying my shoes in my hand, walking on the snow barefoot. I walked to the outside gate of the house, about to put my hand on that door to freedom, to party land, and I hear the taxi driver over the intercom system talking to my grandmother. He said, "Ma'am, your taxi's here." And my grandmother said, "Are you nuts? It's 1 a.m. And I knew I was in trouble. So I had another brilliant idea, as most 13-year-olds do. I snuck back into the house. I went into the pantry. I took everything off except for my bra and underwear. And I was gonna walk down there, grab a glass of water, and tell her I was just coming in the kitchen to grab water. So I grabbed my glass of water. I walked out into the living room. My grandmother took one look at me and she said, "Prophet Muhammad, help me." Not only she was sneaking out naked. No, I insisted. No, I was just grabbing water. And she said, "I have raised 4 daughters. Go into your room before I have a stroke or a heart attack." The relationship between me and my grandparents had a whole lot of conflict, had a whole lot of love. We taught them things and they taught us things, and that exchange was beautiful. After 5 years of being there and graduating high school, the Iranian government decided to release our passports. And in the 5 years we were gone, my parents had been through a lot. They had closed their first restaurant, and they had opened a new one, but with many struggles. They couldn't afford to pay for the investment of the new restaurant and to pay for rent. So they slept on that restaurant floor until they got it on its feet. And that restaurant, they finally could take fettuccine off of the menu. What tended to happen, unfortunately, is that we survived the Iranian Revolution but didn't survive the Portland Revolution. And due to the pandemic and the riots, we closed 30 years after we opened. In the 5 years that passed, we came back to the States. Me and my sister started working multiple jobs, started going to college, and we started helping at the restaurant. And then I started to train to be a dentist. And I finished my first year of dental school. I was so proud of myself. I was gonna party that whole week and just celebrate. I got a call from my aunt from Tehran. And my aunt said to me, "I'm sorry to inform you, but Grandma's breast cancer is back, the one she fought in her 30s. And it's back with a vengeance, and it has spread to her lungs." I dropped out of dental school, and even though I'd vowed to never go back to Tehran, I took the next flight back. So we had this another beautiful exchange. I stayed with her. I would feed her, we would play cards, I would brush her hair. We would fall asleep holding hands. I wouldn't sleep much at night, just the thought of losing this amazing person that meant so much to me. I ended up coming back to the States, and I'd go back and forth to go through treatment with her. My grandmother would talk often to me about sacrifices and how important they were in life, and how they help us to build resilience and relate to others and build our relationships. She would tell me about doing good, and that we should do it silently and graciously. At her funeral, we had a group that showed up, and we thought they were at the wrong funeral. So I walked up and I said, "Sorry, I think you're at the wrong funeral." And they said, "Is this Gohar's funeral?" Which was my grandmother's name, which meant jewel. And we said, "Yes." And it was a group from a village, a very mountainous village. that for 20 years we found out my grandmother would send shoes to the kids so they could go to school. And these were kids that had graduated high school and went through college because of my grandmother. So my grandmother calls me up and she says, I'm dying and I would love for you to come here and spend time with me. I thought about my grandmother and how she had said to me about making those sacrifices. My mother had made the sacrifices for me. Me and my grandmother had the closest connection, so when she was sick, my mother decided to stay here, work at the restaurant, and allow me to be with my grandmother. So it was time for me to make that sacrifice and allow my mother to go back home and be with her mother as I stayed here and worked at the restaurant. Every day, even now, I hear my grandmother's voice in my ear. She is the one that guides me. She used to always tell me, one good deed a day. Even if it's small, it makes a big impact. And that all of the sacrifices that we make, all the kindness we put out there, it's never wasted. And that hatred never solves anything. It just makes things worse. And we need more of that in this world, a good reminder of those things. When I get anxious, she's the first person I talk to. And as the days go by, I do a lot of what I do to honor her for the way she raised me. If it's the little things that I have a colleague who's having a tough week and I take her flowers, or the kids that are at my kids' school who have food insecurities that we do food bags for. Those are my small good deeds a day that I do to honor her. Another thing that I do is I eat pomegranates the way she did. She would open them, she would share them, and she would eat them with her hands. And I do the same thing. And I eat these pomegranates to feed my soul. Thank you. Before I get off the stage, I wanted to thank my immigrant parents who worked so hard, my whole life. And if we ever forget and we're going through tough times in life, like my neighbor is now, it's a really good reminder if we think about the tough people in our families and we remind ourselves that we come from strong roots and that as human beings we're resilient. Thank you.
Thank you, Sara. You've got a special daughter there. Yeah. And we're happy to have you in this country. Thank you. Thank you so much. We need a lot more welcoming, that's for sure. So it's going to be a long 4 years, obviously. Yeah. Immigrants built this country. I won't get any more political than that. Thank you again, Sara. That's a great story. Thank you so much. Your grandmother sounds like a special woman. Our final teller is Brian Rohr. He's a poet, writer, and performative storyteller based in the Northwest. He recently published a feature-length poetry book, Shaken to My Bones, a poetic midrash on the Torah. He's the founder and director of the Stafford Challenge, an international poetry project that inspires over 1,000 participants to write a poem every day for a year, influenced by the legendary poet William Stafford. Brian studied with mythologist and master storyteller Daniel Deardoff and has shared his storytelling craft nationwide, internationally, delighting audiences of all ages, oftentimes focusing on timeless myths, the old stories, sacred stories, folk tales, and fairy tales from diverse cultures. He sees storytelling as an integral part of his spiritual practice, continually calling him to be honest with himself and his intentions. Storytelling connects him to his roots, passions, and integrity. Through storytelling, he shows us how to travel our own unique life path and celebrate the journeys we're on. Please welcome to the stage, Brian Rohr.
This is for my shadow to tell story while I do. No, I'm just teasing. We'll get to that. Heart of sky, heart of earth, help my breath be a bridge from this world to the myth world and back again. It's an old storyteller's prayer. The auditorium in Albuquerque, New Mexico, was completely full, yet I was utterly unaware of anyone else around me. On the stage, using only his voice and a drum, the storyteller was weaving a trance around everyone. And I was enthralled. I was enchanted. I was on a journey following the exploits of the story he was telling. I had never heard storytelling like this before. I'd never experienced storytelling like this before. It was alive, it was unique, it was wild, it was ancient, and it fed a part of me that didn't even know it was hungry for something like that. And I knew in that moment that I wanted to study at the feet of the master storyteller, Daniel Deerdorf. Now, he happened to live at the eastern tip of the Olympic Peninsula, and at the time, I lived in Chicago. But we stayed in touch, after that, and one day, I was in an alleyway in Chicago on break from work, and I was talking with Danny on the phone, deciding does it make sense maybe to move to Port Townsend, Washington, or not to be with him. And he said to me, as we were talking, and I was asking him, well, what would it be like? He said, I tell the old stories. So I tell the old myths and folk tales, fairy tales, sacred stories, wisdom stories, ones that are hundreds or even thousands of years old, that are passed down from generation to generation to generation. And to learn stories like that, you need to know how to communicate with the living world. Do you understand what I'm talking about? And I said, I have no idea what you mean. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I didn't know what he was saying. And he said, well, think about this. Have you ever had an experience where you were trying to, wrestle with something, you were trying to figure something out, figure out some dilemma or figure out something, you open your door and there on your doorstep is a feather. And it's a message of some kind. Have you ever had an experience like that? And I was like, well, I kind of get what you're talking about, and we continued to talk, and we hung up the phone, and there I was in the alleyway in Chicago, and I was just thinking about what he told me. I was thinking about it, and my eyes drifted down to the ground, and right there, between my feet, was a crow's feather. And I knew that I was moving back to the Pacific Northwest. And so when I arrived in Port Townsend and I arrived to be with Danny and to mentor with him, what I soon realized is it wasn't just kind of a normal study. He was just going to teach me a few skills like that. It was about being in community with him. I was to learn through osmosis, through observation, through relationship. And to be in community with Danny, as you may already kind of understand, did also mean being in community with the living world. And it was very important for him to teach that to me. Like, for instance, when I first arrived, I was walking with a cane because I had had surgery on my leg. And he took one look at me, and he went to a drawer, and he took out a knife, and he handed that knife to me. And he said, I want you to go to a forest. Find a good straight stick and whittle yourself a walking stick. Which I did. It took me a while, I was a slow student. It took me a little while. But I did whittle myself that walking stick, and it felt good in my hand. And it felt good to walk that way. Another time, Danny said, I want to teach you how to start a fire. I was like, okay, I know how to start a fire. But he said, we're not going to use matches. We're not going to use a lighter. We're not going to put lighter fluid or anything like that. I'm going to teach you how to start a fire using flint and steel. And the reason we're going to use flint and steel is because you need to work to get that fire going. You need to work hard, going over and over. I don't know if you know flint and steel, but there's the flint is the stone, and the steel gets little shards of sparks come off if you do it right. And you catch it in a nest and blow it into a flame in your hand and then put that in the wood. And the reason that was important to him, for me to learn, was to have a relationship with fire, to learn if I'm working at it and it's not easy, then I'm building relationship. And why is it important to build relationship as a storyteller with fire? Because fire, which they say is older than the sun, fire is the carrier of all the stories. So it's an important thing to have. And so these are the things that Danny was teaching me when I arrived, and at some point I'm like wondering, is he going to teach me how to, tell a story or not, whatever, not realizing at the time that he was teaching me how to tell a story. One day he did call me and he said, Brian, I want you to come over and be sure to bring your drum. And so I did. So I grabbed my drum and I went over to Danny's place. I went over to Danny's place, to his studio, and there he was in his wheelchair with his drum in front of him. And a little aside, when Danny was a toddler, he was stricken with polio, and it twisted his body, and he was paraplegic and lived in a wheelchair through his whole life. And so there he is in the wheelchair with his drum, and I come with my drum, and he said, I'm going to teach you the storyteller's rhythm, and I'm going to teach you how to talk and drum at the same time. And we learn the rhythm. It's kind of a very basic rhythm, and the idea is I'm not making music, right? I'm just doing something for my voice to travel, to create that trance state. And then he says, okay, you got that rhythm, and now you need to learn how to talk and drum at the same time. And that was not easy for me. And he said, I want you to pick a song, to practice with. And so I picked the most complicated song that I knew. Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. Right, and I learned how to drum and talk in rhythm just like this, and that was how I started. And it took me many, many, many weeks until I could eventually go, Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow, and anywhere that Mary went, that lamb would follow her. So, I was able to break it apart, right? I was able to break the drumming and the rhythm with the speaking in rhythm, and I was able to do that. And it was great. And then finally, I got that down, and Danny said, great. Now I want to teach you about how we start a story, the intro to a story. And so think about it. Like all stories have intros, right? They need some kind of intro. If you think of a fairy tale, what's the most common intro in a fairy tale? Exactly. Once upon a time. If anyone says once upon a time, you know a story is going to happen, right? There's no doubt. You kind of lean back, you relax, you're like, all right, I'm in for a story. That's fun. And so he started teaching me how to play with this idea of the intro, all right? So it'd be like once upon a time. So it might go something like this. Well, it was once upon a time, it was once upon a time. It was once upon a time. It was once beside a time. It was once above a time and below a time. It was once between a time. It was once within a time when there was another kind of time. And before that, there was another kind of time. And before that, there was another kind of time. And before that, there was a kind of time that wasn't even time at all. It was like a great snake that moved and undulated through the world before time was domesticated. Or like a rhythm, a heartbeat. And everything that was alive moved and danced to the rhythm of that heartbeat. It was in a time like that that there was a village, and then the story would go on. Now, why was it important to play with all this idea of time and inside a time and above a time and what is going on? And the idea is to confuse you. Well, Danny would say it's to confuse you, and he's right, and that is the idea. It's to confuse you, but really it's not to confuse all of you. There's a part of you that can follow it, but it's to confuse the logical mind, right? Because when you're telling the old stories, the logical part of your mind is not going to help you, right? The old stories are not logical stories. They're like dreams. They speak in metaphor, they speak in imagery, and if you're thinking logically, you're in trouble. Like you're going to have a really hard time, but if you can let go of needing and you do once upon a time, above, below, everything, your logical mind is off, forget it. I'm out of here, and then you can really hear a story, right? And so we use that. We use the convention of that. Why am I telling you all this stuff? Why am I up here telling you about what I learned from Danny and some of these things? It's important for me. I think about him a lot. I think about Danny a lot. This was a shirt he used to wear. And I wear it now because Danny's not with us anymore. He's not with us anymore. Back in 2019, in September, about a handful of months, before the pandemic, Danny died. He took his last breath. Post-polio finally had caught up to him. And here I am, charged with carrying what he had taught me. And I think back to that time in Albuquerque, New Mexico, all those years ago. And I think about that trance I was in and his voice and the drumming, and they're like seeds that were put in me. The seeds were showered over me. And they took root. And they began to sprout. And that sprouting utterly changed the trajectory of my life. I had a comfortable life there in Chicago. But because of Danny and because of that feather, I moved all the way to Port Townsend to study with a master. And because of that, I'm able to be here to share some of the wisdom that he was able to give to me, just share a little bit of seeds of that with all of you. Maybe something will sprout. At least that's what they say. That's how it happened, and that is all I know. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Brian. Great story. And you know what? That is exactly the story I wanted to hear, because I look out here and I see a bunch of storytellers. And I know if you don't want to get up on a stage that you may be telling the stories to your family or your friends, but if you think you might want to do something like this, we do it here a couple times a year. We have open mic storytelling, and it's a lot of fun. So if you think you want to give it a go sometime, sign up on the list and come to one of the open mic storytellings and give it a shot. We do a travel one. That'll be in June, and then there'll be some other theme. These tellers were all amazing. Can I have you all come back up on stage and give you all a big round of applause, please? Oh, I warned him about that. Thank you so much. Great job. Yeah, thank you. Great job. And thank you all so much for coming. Now, you don't have to leave yet, though, because we got the raffle coming up. So thank you so much, tellers. You may return to your seats. You can just leave that. And do people need the lights up a little bit so they can see their ticket numbers? Okay, stand by for that. Okay, I can feel the excitement building in the room, Anne.
For the raffle?
Oh, yeah, is there something else we should be excited about? I know what I'm excited for. I'm excited for a large gin and tonic, actually. Now, what did you call that gin and tonic? A polite one. What is a polite one, anyway? Oh, okay. Like it. Does everybody have a ticket and have their tickets in their hands, and are they looking at them? Good. Oh, hold on. Do you need another ticket? Oh, yeah. We can grab. Can you get one more ticket, Hadassah? Thank you. Oh, hey, let's give a quick round of applause. What's that? Yeah, choose the winner. If you win, they're going to be very suspicious. We have three great volunteers here today, River, Hadassah, and Tatiana. So can you give them a round of applause? They really helped make it go. Here comes your ticket. Oh, there we go. If you can pass the ticket over, great. Okay, now mix those up good, Ann.
Okay.
Now don't start, okay, now, you're definitely not going to win if you start cheating. Did you lose your, we do need one more ticket, okay. We're never going to get to these prizes if everyone keeps losing their ticket. Oh, no problem. While we're waiting, I will tell you the back fence tickets that you are able to get. So Frame Masters does these shows frequently. She's got a whole set of shows coming up, but there's one coming up on February 20th, which is a Thursday, I think, right? Mikey's in that show along with 5 other tellers, and I will tell you that's going to be a really good show. And it's what's the venue again? Siren Theater in Mississippi. So you're going to schlep into Portland, but it's definitely going to be worth it. Yeah. Do you know how many seats that theater seats? Ooh, okay. So if you don't win, you better buy your tickets soon. Oh, I'm going to get my tickets. Okay.
I think we're ready.
Yes. Ann's going to pull one out of the hat. First come, first serve, so you get to choose.
Okay, if I can read the numbers.
Do you want my glasses?
I got it. I'll just hold it really close. Okay, the first number is 446624.
Ends in 624.
446624.
6624. Probably. Oh, wait. I see somebody raising their hand, maybe. I see a hand up. Okay. Yeah. So, Madame, you may choose what you would like. There's a $20 book corner certificate, 4 tickets to the Beaverton Community Theater here, or the back fence show. Those are the 3 things to choose from. We have 2 book corner certificates. Oh, they're talking about it. She's taking the Beaverton Community Theater. They have a show coming up soon. I want to say it's in March, but I don't know the exact dates yet. Okay, next number. So now we're down to community theater, back fence, and 2 book corners.
Okay, the next number is 446615. So 615.
6615. Oh, what's it going to be? Okay, BCT. All right. The Beaverton Community Theater is all spoken for. We're now down to book corner and back fence.
The next number ends in 6732.
6732. Oh, he thinks he's got it. Okay. What would you like, sir? Oh, we're out of theater. Oh, the back fence show? Okay, great. And then my business card is in there. You can just email me your email, and I will connect you with Frayne, and she'll connect you with the tickets. Okay? And if you want to go to the show on the 20th, I'd email me quickly, but it's also good for future shows. They do a lot of shows. Okay? Yeah.
Okay, our next number is 6349.
6349. Oh, that came up right away. We have a winner. $20 to the book corner. You can get a lot of books for $20 at the book corner.
Okay, and we have one more.
Down to the last one.
It ends in 6726.
6726.
6726.
6726. Oh, another lost ticket. Or somebody left early. 6726. Wait. Uh-oh. Did you find the winner? No. Oh. They got to be here to win.
Okay.
All right, Ann, here's another one.
6743.
Oh, Mikey's wife wins. All right. So the book corner is just like 1 block that way. I think they close at 5 on Saturdays. You guys could rush out of here and go over there. We send all our discards over there. There's great books over there. Yeah. All right, that's all the prizes. But if you come to the library show on the 18th, I'm going to do some Oprah Winfrey stuff. Let me tell you, there's going to be stuff under the seats. I'm going to go nuts.
Are we going to have a T-shirt cannon?
Oh, there's a question. Ann wants to know if we're going to have the T-shirt cannon. I did ask the director as she was walking by the other day if we could get a T-shirt cannon, and she laughed and said yes, but I don't think she thought I was serious. But, Ann, your arm's a cannon.
It's pretty good. It's
All
pretty
right.
good. Yeah.
If we can get some T-shirts, Ann will be the cannon.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, thank you all so much for coming. It would not be a show without you. And we have a hand raised. Yes. Yes. Yes, we are going to film the author talk, but I'm going to tell you a piece of information I just learned. There is a copyright limitation on how long that we can put it on the website for. So what's going to happen is if you're you want to be probably on the email list for one book. If you're not on that, you should get on it because Jenny will send an email out when the video hits the YouTube. And I'm the one who makes it hit the YouTube, and Sometimes that can take a little while for technological reasons. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the 7 days after the author talk, but as soon as I get it pieced together and on the website, I'll tell Jenny and she'll send it out, and then we only have 7 days on there. So if you want to try pirating it, that's your problem. Any other questions? Thoughts? Oh, and please fill out I think I saw one. Oh, and it won't be super late night. It'll be 7 o'clock. I mean, it's still after hours here. And it's April 18th, which is a Friday night. Yeah, so. Yes, thank you again so much for coming. Have a great rest of your evening, and see you next year.